Good afternoon to everyone. You know, when you're doing a panel discussion at the end of such a day, I think it's a high bar, not only for the panelists, but also for the audience. So we thought we'll mix it up a little bit. In most panel discussions, what you find is, the panel discusses amongst itself, and towards the end, there is time for questions from the audience. We're going to mix it up here a bit. So we will start off with some questions and discussion with the panel, then throw it actually open to the audience, and then come back to the panel again, right? We want to cover as much as possible. So the one request that I had made to the panelists was we want to cover as many questions as possible. So they have kindly agreed to keep their answers crisp and short. It's a very unusual group of entrepreneurs that we have here, because in some sense, it crosses multiple industries, but there is something which actually unifies all of them. I think all of them thought really big, started small, and are on the path of creating something really big. So it's great to have all of you. I want to start off with a personal question to each one of you, right? It's very specific to your journey, and Tarun, if it's okay, I'm going to start off with the first question to you, right? So you've personally experienced at Policy Bazaar really, from seed funding to now, I believe, close to IPO or Series F funding, right? As you've made this journey, where have you found it helpful to spend time? In raising funds, in driving business, and don't say both, where and when has been one more important than the other?
You've taken away my diplomatic answer. So, but I think when we started off, of course, it's very important to raise, especially when we were the not so smart ones who started in 2008. And if you remember, 2008 we were the butt of jokes and not really the like I said, the most intelligent ones. But what we realized was that at that point in time, we had to develop the product before we really could get any funds, right? It's a bit different today. In today, there's a lot of seeds that's happening, almost at the point of concept stage, right? Which wasn't happening back then. But I think what we did have, which helped us a lot, was that we had a large team. So we were about 12 to 17 of us who joined right at the beginning. About 11 of us came from a last venture into it. So we had the ability to focus on product while they were, two guys always hunting funding. So we kind of spent time, but it was, let's say, my dedicated time was going into building the business, and let's say there was someone who was only focused on getting funding. So we were able to do that just because we had the presence of a large team. But I actually feel, your question is actually, very thought-provoking, because if I was to start up on my own, and let's say I was leading that effort, how would I do it today? I probably don't have the answer. But I think somewhere it was always about product.
Okay, thank you. Ashwini, moving to you next. Probably many in the audience don't know the story of your background, but you actually spent a fair bit of time outside the country, and then, in the recent past, decided to move back to India. What actually took you to the US, and more importantly, what brought you back to start your business?
What took me to the US? I followed a boy who's now my co-founder, so long-term investment, I suppose. So I went to do my grad school in the US. So I got a degree, master's in product design, and I worked for over 10 years at Intel. My then husband, multiple roles. He's a neuroscientist by background, and he was working with DARPA and defense and in the US building AI systems and computer vision based systems. And I come from, at Intel, I spent a considerable chunk of my time building product systems that use image recognition and different types of AI. And the two of us, very different types of industry, right? I'm hardcore corporate, he's hardcore academia. He was at Stanford while just contemplating becoming a professor, been in academia for like close to 15 years. And the two of us always knew we were going to do something together. And both of us were very frustrated with our journeys in AI in our respective worlds. In academia, the story was largely about AI being in science labs, in highly controlled environments, where if you take a piece of AI out of that controlled environment, it breaks. It can't live outside of that environment, right? And for me in the corporate world, as Intel was trying to build out many different types of platform teams, again, scaling image recognition, computer vision, AI in the context of a really large organization that was trying to reinvent itself, had its set of challenges as well, but I learned a ton in that environment. And so around 2013, we looked around the market. There weren't too many efforts actually bringing this kind of AI into the market on scale, right? And that is something we were really driven by. How do you take AI of different kinds, computer vision, NLP, all types of AI, and how do you put it in the hands of people in a meaningful way, where you're actually trying to solve a meaningful problem is something that really drove us, right?
And why India back?
Why back to India? Well, you know, we were in SF, and it's a highly, highly noisy market, for a lack of a better way to put it. People kept asking us, why would you leave SF to go to Chennai to start a deep tech company? It made no sense to most people, but I tell people Chennai is a university town. For a lack of a better way to put it, some brilliant deep tech talent over there, AI talent in Chennai, very grounded talent as well, not a frothy market at all. And we found a huge opportunity to build, you know, a pretty large organization. We're almost 150, 200 people today, and we found a fantastic opportunity to really bring that talent out, nurture them, and build this kind of a deep tech kind of talent pool out of Chennai. And we now cross geography. We're in SF, we're in Chennai, we're in Japan, we're in multiple geographies today.
Okay, great. Ashni, the question to you, and you know, I'm sure somebody has asked this question in some form or fashion. You know, you actually have retail, or you've experienced retail for a long time. An easy way out for you would have been to, you know, stay on with the existing business. What made you start new businesses within Future Group itself?
Right, so I think what retail actually did for me was, I grew up in the backyards of stores, so I could, and I love just watching consumer behavior. And the more you watch India and the more you watch Indian consumer behavior, you're bustling with ideas, right? So I think that's what always kept prompting me to think beyond retail actually. So Future Consumer was born from this prime idea, using all the customer proximity that we hold to build a fresh idea of an FMCG organization. So actually we use what we know best, which is consumers and India, and learning how to build brands, learning how to distribute them very uniquely, and learning how to differentiate and premiumize as we go along in this FMCG business. But I think we're very, the country actually offers you more ideas than one can actually grasp. So I think it's that and the customer which is the inspiration.
Okay, great. Deepak, coming to you. You know, it's interesting. You know, you were doing a cushy, if I can call that cushy, right, consulting job, and you decided to dive literally into the world of entrepreneurship. What was the aha moment where you said, you know, enough of consulting, and let me start a business of my own?
So Abhik, it's not cushy, as you know. So you know, every year of my life at McKinsey, I would think of quitting. I never had the guts or the idea to quit. But I think since 2006 to 2014, every year I would think that I will quit, let me just wait for this idea and aha moment to come in, but it never came. In fact, I took LOA twice to start up.
LOA for
leave of absence.
Leave of absence.
To start out, and then after a couple of months, I would always come back to McKinsey and say, "Yaar, kuch samajh mein nahi aa raha." let's join back. But one of my mentors in 2014 early said, Deepak, you can't, ride the two boats, sail the two boats, right? If you have to sail the high seas, you have to leave the sight of the shore. Just quit and then explore. And I was 32 then. I thought if I don't do it now, then I'd probably never do it. So I left McKinsey, started exploring what I want to do, and then over the next few months, figured this idea in form of logistics, transportation, relay trucking, and then it became a calling since then, and it's been 5 years, and I think I'll end up spending my life in this area, and I love every bit of it. So it feels very different from my life at McKinsey. I was bored, I didn't enjoy, but I think I now see the difference. Okay. Abhik.
No, great. So, it is fascinating to hear your individual stories, and 2-3 things strike me as as I see your experiences. There's the power of the idea, and then there's the power of execution. So one question that I would have for all of you is, there are 2 schools of thought regarding the market, competition, consumer. There is one school which says, don't worry about competition, just focus on your consumer, and everything else will take care of it itself. There's another school which says, Amazon or Google could enter your industry, so be always on the lookout for competition, and think about how you're going to win against them. In your business, where do you focus more and why?
I'll take that. At least at my org, we are paranoid. We are literally paranoid about any competition coming up. We're fortunate that there aren't too many and too big, but I think there is no right answer, there is no right thought, there is no right concept. It's about how do you perceive it. Does it keep you on your toes? Then it's very good. If it's, so there's logical and there's illogical, right? If it's only about the money, if there's somebody who comes with the large money bags, then I understand. But from a concept stage, I think I also agree that it's really the customer and the product that will make all the difference, right? If you have a superior customer experience, especially in our scheme of things, then it's very difficult for anybody else to come from behind. But having said that, being paranoid has helped us throughout. We've been able to kind of focus on both. But yeah, if you just keep focusing that nobody should beat you, you will go through the customer journey eventually. Yeah.
Ashni, you are passionate about consumer, right?
Yeah, so I just want to say that I'm very passionate about understanding consumer behavior, right? And I think in consumer behavior lies all truths, all models, all competition gets embedded within that. So I think the way we do it is actually continuously have younger people than you telling you what to do or what not to do. So at Future Consumer, for example, we have a group called 35 Under 35, and trust me, they are my biggest critics. They teach me what not to do. They also tell me what to do, and they keep you agile and adept. So I learn all about SimSim, TikTok, Bulbul, all kinds of new models, all kinds of new technology. Okay, social commerce now, tomorrow something else. But that's what keeps us on the ground all the time. And I think consumer behavior incorporates everything about competition, everything about context, everything about larger disruptive changes that are happening across all context. And I think that keeps us on our toes. That also keeps us very inspired.
Can I just request, as you think about the audience of entrepreneurs, if there is something specific that you would tell them to watch out for or to do, that'll be great.
Three things, right? Every time we think about competition here, we're a B2B company in the space of AI. We largely serve retail for the most part today. And I think for us, three things come to mind when you say competition. One is moats, right? Before you start your company, in the early stages of the company and in the growth stage of your company, constantly asking yourself, what are the moats, defensible moats you've built for your company? I think needs to be baked into the strategy of the company, right? And that is one thing that we keep asking ourselves, right? For us, we know that our technology expertise is clearly a moat for us. It's not something that someone can come and build overnight, right? We also understand that customer success and relationship is a huge part of the moats we have. You know what they say, it costs 10 times more to acquire a new customer than it takes to like keep the customer you have, right? So those moats, I think, are one way to think about competition. The second thing is, you know, I think about the analogy, the metaphor of juggling, right? As a founder, you're constantly juggling, right? So at any given point of time, you have a few balls up in the air and you have some in your hands. And it's just taking turns, right? Competition is one of those balls. And you can't just lose sight of it. You kind of are constantly keeping, you know, a tab on the balls that are up in the air as well. Competition is like that, right? So that's the second kind of thing that I'd say. You can't ever forget it. It's always there. It doesn't have to be the center piece in the room, but you can never lose sight of it, right? And then the last thing is, going back to his story about paranoia, I think, you know, Andy Grove says it all in his book about being paranoid, and I think as a founder, being paranoid is not an option. So I think these three things kind of give you a framework for the way you can think about competition.
Deepak?
So, you know, in our case, we've thought about this whole thing a little bit differently. So, you know, we have been a very purpose-driven organization. Our purpose has been to make lives of truck drivers better. And we know that this is a big problem in the Indian logistics and transportation space. This is going to take multiple decades to solve it. And if we solve their lives better, in turn, we'll always be giving customers a much, much better service. And therefore, we'd rather be obsessed about making lives of truck drivers better and making lives of, you know, every participant in the logistics better. And in turn, we'll continue to give better customer experience and customer service. So we have approached this thing from a you know, mission or vision, and then been obsessed about our mission to give customers a much better service. And a lot of times I get asked this question that in our leadership principles or in our values in the company, we never talk about customer obsession, because I also argue that customer sometimes does not know what's great for them, right? And you have to outthink them and, you know, and present an opportunity or a product which they would have never thought about. For example, when we came out with this transformational transit time model, we said Delhi to Mumbai, we can do deliveries in a day on road. People were just at 3 days, 5 days, 10 days, right? They were not even thinking about how to use this capability. And we would have never been able to got through that if we were taking consumer feedback or consumer research, or we were obsessed about, you know, giving customers we were obsessed about pilots. It landed us in a great, it landed us in a place where we could give a disruptive customer experience and service.
Great. Thank you very much, all of you. I think we are doing very well on time as well, so thank you on that. I'm going to take a few questions from the audience. So if anybody has questions, please just raise your hand. I just have 2 requests. Can you just give a single line description of who you are, your name and what you do, and then please ask a brief question, you know, and if there is somebody specific that you want to answer, then indicate that, otherwise we will ask for volunteers. So.
Thanks, I'm Mansi and I run a logistics company for the F&B industry. My question is for you, Mr. Deepak. You have scaled up significantly and I'm a big fan of your company. I want to ask you, as you scale up and work with so many drivers, what are the key top 2 things that have helped you to maintain quality of services? Is it technology? Is it financial incentives? Is it training? What has helped you scale up to the level you are?
Thank you. Great question. I think, so, you know, idea works very well in a small, great idea works very well in a small setup, but as you scale up, you know, it also starts to get rust, right? So one has to be very careful during the scale-up journey to keep the promise to every stakeholder, you know, and be honest to that promise all across. So we did 2 things. One, we never compromised on the promise to the pilot and the mission we were on, right? Which means we wrote a paper called Future of Truck Pilots in India. And there were 20 initiatives and ideas around that. And we envisioned that future. We said it will take us 10 years maybe to get there. But we would always look at that and stay honest to that. I'm not saying there has not been phases in the journey where we haven't got distracted. We did get distracted, but we quickly came back to that. which meant in initial days, first 1,000 drivers were interviewed by senior team, including me, right? So that we learn how to, we went very detailed in terms of who to hire, who not to hire, how to train, what small things have to be done to ensure the, the whole, dimension of respect changes for them. That's one. Second parallel stream which we started was, we realized that if it has to scale up to a kind of a lakhs of pilots, which this company wants to do, we have to enable everything using data and technology. There can't be, because anything which is human, is prone to kind of a finite scale. It will start to get rest. I mean, culture will not, might not last, So while we are focusing on this culture, we also started to put in technology into every element. So the way the pilot app is designed, the way, the interactions with pilots are, the way we use data to hire them and also de-hire them, the way technology went into managing tire breakdowns, asset maintenance, managing every aspect of logistics operation is something which is a journey we are on, but I think that's how the scalability has happened. Today, can we add 1,000 trucks a month? Absolutely. I think a couple of years ago, you would have asked me how many trucks a month can you add? Maybe 50 was the limit we were at. But I can easily say that we can add 1,000. That's the level of tech and culture scalability have. But at some point in time, we want to stretch that and probably add even more.
Thank you. Any other question? Next question.
I'm a third generation entrepreneur from Malpani Group. My question is to Ms. Shashni Biyani. I wanted to understand what's Retail 3.0 and your entire transformation of FMCG game, and how do you wish to tackle threats like Big Basket and Grofers, trying permutation and combinations with logistic cost?
So, Ashni, if you try to answer this full question, it will be, another, yeah. So if there is some part of that you...
I think the mindset that we are building this FMCG organization on is in actually creating brands across multiple categories. We are building a distribution model which is rich in its data flow. We are building a model that has the most agile supply chain because it is embedded with nuances of customer insight, which allows us to take decisions in a real-time way. And therefore, we have created a supply chain network which is extremely agile and that forecasts real-time. So that, if I can say, is the component of what we are trying to do with FMCG 2.0. Now, layering this with Retail 3.0, I think we've always believed that actually our retail stores are public spaces. And these public spaces or these retail experiences helps us understand how consumers behave. What we are now trying to do is layer with it the understanding of how often we can bring them into the store, how we can sell them our own brands, how we can nudge their consumer behavior and keep getting them back into our store again and again, rather than just chasing consumer acquisition randomly. So I hope I've answered some bit of it.
Thank you, Ashni.
Hi, I'm Naveen Prakash from Global Logistics Solutions. My question obviously is to Deepak. So it's all about disruptive technology in logistics industry. Your company and Blackbuck, they are doing the disruption. So my question is from the traditional brick and mortar businesses, basically logistics companies. So you are on the other side, but do you have any advice for us how to stay afloat and bring in changes so that we can survive?
I think I'd rather be asking this question to you. No, we are as brick and mortar. We run physical trucks, 3,000 of them. We run 3 million square feet of warehousing. I think we are just enabling all of this through technology. I think that's, and in linking it to other question, just for scalability, right? I think that's where technology comes into play. I think brick and mortar traditional businesses are built the right way. They have the right metrics of measurement of profitability and everything else. I think there are only two areas where companies like us have probably a slight edge is constant innovation around what customers want, what the ecosystem wants, and therefore more agility to give that. And the second one is linking everything using kind of technology so that the scalability from X to 2X to 3X to 4X can happen faster with kind of limited resources. Logistics, as you know, is a very interface business, lot of drudgery in the entire transaction, and only tech can kind of lead to scalability.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Vishal Sanghvi. I'm a ASCENT member last 5 years. I'm running my Internet of Things company and also transforming into the smart life portfolio. So my question, can you give us a tips to this entrepreneurs community, how we can increase the spending power of our own customers? Otherwise, क्या होता है कि चलता है, क्या ज़रूरत है, So what kind of, because here panels are all, industry actually. So what are the tips you can able to give which can increase the consumer powers? Taking decision, otherwise, thank you.
Yeah.
I think creating a category is a science and an art. There are lots of companies that have done that before. One, I'd say study those really hard. There are a lot of companies out there that have built, not just from a business model perspective, but I'm talking about it from fundamentally when the technology itself is new and it's going to change the way somebody does something, right? It's not the business model, it's not the business itself, but the technology here is what is really changing the way someone does something. Oftentimes, I mean, the entire story is a story of change management. That's it. People don't like to change their systems. People don't like to change the way they do things unless they're incentivized to change something they're doing, right? In our world, for example, companies are all working on Excel sheets. Rows, they maintain their inventory in Excel, thousands of lines of Excel sheets where they've got each product and they have stuff listed and people are sitting and then typing all this stuff, and we walk in and say, you don't have to do anything, just upload all the images of all the products you've got and our computer vision algorithms will create all the data that you have, 300 people sitting and then typing, it's really mind-numbing work. And people are not, nobody wants to change, right? Like it's very hard to change a system like that. And so, there's a fantastic piece of writing about the role of product marketing and product evangelism and educating the industry in actually creating a category, right? So you get to the good news, the bad news is nobody wants to change, but the good news is you get to create the category, you get to give it a name, and you get to own the category. And that is a very powerful place to be in. And you get to own the metrics, define the metrics. So at the end of the day, I'd say a lot to do with creating categories, especially relating to technology, is all about creating the right kind of content to help educate people about, because it's a vision sale at the end of the day. You got to get them to see the future, how the future can be, and you need to be able to, and convince them that, not just see the vision, show them how they can go from here to there, what the process of change is going to look like, and then help them manage that change.
Tarun, people never bought policies online, right? And you guys have changed that. How did you do it?
I have no clue. When we started off the business, it's a funny one. So, we thought, a bunch of guys, we got together and we thought, we'll set up this really cool website. We'll get all the products online. Customers will come, they'll buy and they'll go away, right? Typical, power of positivity. So we set up a website. We did whatever marketing was there. Customers come online and they'd go away. And, it took us a lot to get from there to where we are because, typically, it's our, no offense to any family members, but chachas and mamas would come home and say, "Yahan sign kar do, sab ho jayega. Aaj 10 rupees daloge, 10 lakh rupees mil jayenge," right? And typically that's how it works. And then, but I think where we did find a lot of material, so to speak, is going after the market that really matters to consumers. What are consumers really worried about? We don't like to talk about it, but we're worried about death. We're worried about disability. We're worried about disease. And this 3D whole concept is where we focused on. So, finding that need, I agree, is very tough, but you will find affinities to it, right? And you can ask a very simple question, people will answer it. If I die today, and let's say my salary is 10 lakh rupees, and if I only cover myself for 1 crore rupees, how many years am I covering my family for? Very tough question, and I think all of you may reevaluate whatever covers you have, but we just ask those simple questions. And I can tell you this was all about going out there and, we just kept asking. All our marketing was just around this. I think that's what's really helped us. We created that niche. And I don't, like I said, I don't have a clue how it
Thank you.
I'll make it very short.
Yeah.
This is Mani here, just getting into thinking of when to make the jump on the entrepreneurship. So on the AI ML space specifically, getting talent is obviously a biggest challenge. And I know you picked up Chennai. I'm from Chennai, and
that's
so
competition standing
so
there.
we have a whole lot of challenge in kind of identifying the right talent. So how did you actually overcome that? I mean, what was the magic out there?
Well, it depends on the kind of talent. I mean, if you are talking about AI ML talent, our colleges do not equip our students with the kind of talent that's needed, when you're starting a company. We follow a very hardcore training approach at our company. And, we have a leadership team. And from the day one, that's largely been the approach, right? So we've had a couple of people at the top who knew, and very specifically, we've spent a lot of our effort in bringing in freshers and training them, rather than having people who were experienced in the year. And the reason for that was all our AI is proprietary. And so we needed someone without the bias and the baggage to be able to come in and kind of learn afresh, unlearn some of the things that you learn in literature, and then kind of jump in there, right? And so very heavy training focused culture, but training is on the job. So the minute they come in, they're thrown in the deep end, right? So there's a lot of, that's how we work. And in the deep end, there'll be a couple of experts around them. And you learn to swim. There's no, how it is. You've seen these in the movies, you've seen them, especially you're from Chennai, the vision of, throwing a kid into the well and the kid learns to swim. We, especially in the space of AI ML, we prefer taking that approach with having a bunch of, experts around them to make sure they don't drown, right? And it's repetitive. There's a lot of focus on training over there. And I'd argue at the cost of, biasing to a city, I'd say Chennai actually has some of the most fantastic deep tech talent in the country.
Ashni, just a follow-up on the same question. So, talent is something that I wanted to cover. When you are looking to hire people on your team, what is it, the one or two top things that you look for? People say, hire for attitude and not for capabilities. I mean, what is it that one or two things that you look for when you are hiring somebody?
So what's important for me is, first of all, for me to have clarity whether I'm hiring a generalist or a specialist. I think when you're hiring a specialist, I think you bring them in to do functions that you need expertise and skill set on. And when I'm hiring for a generalist, what I'm actually looking for the most is clarity of mind. I'm actually looking for a lot of clarity of mind and a belief in the organizational vision, organizational direction, because I think if you have this intact, everything else is fungible, right? So these are the important things for me.
I'm Nitin Asher from Chennai. This is a question to Tarun. In this policy bazaar, insurance is a very complex matter, and how do you establish a customer connect, and where there's a very dynamic change in requirement of each customers, how do you do it?
So we've learned from the customer, right? I understand that these are complex products, but they are based on very simple concepts, right? So if somebody dies, the family gets money. If somebody is in hospital, they get money. So the concepts are simple. The products can be complex. But trust you me, we've started buying refrigerators online. We've started buying, you order 10 t-shirts and you send 4 back, right? That's who we are. I think the customers have actually moved on, and we're the ones following him or her. We're not the ones leading. So from our perspective, the most amount of capital in terms of resources, most amount of talent in resources lies at the product layer. So our product heads are probably the best paid. Don't tell them that. Actually tell them that again and again. But that's where we spend most of our time. How can you simplify something? How can you explain better to the customer? So the only time we use, at least in my parlance, deep tech, but is we've actually got a bot listening to all the words that the customer speaks. And we've got a massive call center, and I'm sure that a lot of you here might have been bugged by one of my guys. But we actually listening to those calls, all of them, and trying to understand what is he asking, Which route can I clear? Can I put it on my site? Should I put it on an email? So yeah, of course, there's a lot of juggery that we do around with the product, but at the core, we keep the customer and what he's telling us.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to attempt one individual question and one common question. So, the first question, Ashni, to you is, you've talked about believing in consumer behavior a lot. What is the one thing that you would tell entrepreneurs in their respective businesses how to really understand consumer behavior? Any specific tips to people?
Right. So I come from a B2C orientation. So for us, I just believe that consumers are a moving picture and never a snapshot. I think they're going to keep changing. I think our job is to always know them, is to always respond to them in whichever way and believe that they're always right. I think that's the only thing that I would say. I think we've created lots of rituals to keep ourselves adept with consumer understanding, consumer behavior. So for example, a team of us spent 7 days across small town India understanding how India is navigating the world of technology. So whatever may be your interest area, whatever you think is those breaking points, it's important for you to constantly stay aware and chase it.
Thank you. Ashwini, question to you. As AI still is in early stages as an industry, right? You've managed to actually build a business, 150 people, and it is a people-intensive business. How do you think about scaling up your business? And as you think about entrepreneurs, especially who are in people-oriented or people-heavy businesses, any tips about thinking about how to scale up?
You know what they say, when you start to get into the growth phase of your company, especially past that Series B, Series C stage, it's all about the team, right? It's entirely about the team. And there's so much literature in B2B especially, and enterprise SaaS especially, where they say once you've reached that 10 million in ARR, you're going to make it. It's a question of how soon you make it, how quickly you make it, where you go, and how do you sustain that growth. And the answer at that point is entirely people, right? And we're at that stage right now where we're hiring middle management, we're hiring senior management, we've got CXO teams, VPs everywhere, and I feel like, culture, and I think he mentioned this a couple of times in the context of their drivers and others as well, but it's very important to understand how do you, keep that ambition and fire in everyone's belly. I think, people come to us largely because of the deep tech company we've built. People are really want to be a part of that journey. And so it's, as you grow, it's very easy to dilute that and to figure out how do you keep that kind of drive is really important. The second thing is being really agile, right? At that stage, if you lose sight of the customer, if you lose sight of what's really working and you don't optimize for what's really working, and fix what's not, you lose sight of the growth. You can very quickly lose momentum, right? And from an organization perspective, I think making sure you have enough people in there. I think generalists, we hire generalists in every single team who have the ability to look broadly, right? So while we do have specialists, I mean, I can't have anybody else coming and doing my vision work and image recognition work, and yet we have a lot of generalists around them who understand, who've been with Anand and I from like the very early days, who can look across the business, right? And we have the same, we have product people sitting in sales, we have AI people sitting in sales. It's a very, very multidisciplinary organization, and there's no way to go ahead and create categories like this unless you have that broad view into that industry. So.
Right. Deepak, so you are the envy of many entrepreneurs, given the kind of success that you've achieved. So the question is, when you, in your early stages, went and approached investors, any learnings from that you would pass on to folks here? What to do, what not to do?
So, it was very hard. Early stage funding for Rivigo was very hard. Not many people know that, and people only know the kind of the success side of it. But it was lots and lots of no's in the early stage, and the reasons were a couple of them, right? One, relay trucking was a unique global idea. So we did not have, the idea was not copied from US or China. Two, we were looking at buying trucks and proving this idea at scale. People were at that time talking about just a smartphone app, and words like hyperlocal and network, network effects was in the phrase. So we were going with a very unique story to to investors who had a certain kind of pre-notion. I think the learning through that was, because the success came later, the learning through that was, I think, sticking to your reality and continuing to sort of communicating that passionately, right? Not coming under pressure to making it a X of Y, because I think if I look at the failures we had were the ones where I called Rivigo as Uber for trucks.
Understood.
Right. And the moment we said, this is unique and this works and this is how it works, actually things started to roll much, much better.
Okay, thank you. So, it's interesting, we had this comment about the generalist versus the specialist. Somebody described you to me as saying, we all have heard the phrase of jack of all, master of none. I believe you are referred to as jack of all, master of all. Can you explain?
I am the most underqualified member of my team. And like by far and away, right? The only time I've gone to IIT is to have paranthas. And, I didn't have a specialization. But, when we started off our journey, and I'll tell you a little tidbit later, but, when we started off Policy Bazaar, I was an analytics guy. And, see Ashish and I were having a discussion. He says, you're an analytics guy and we're starting a company. Data to hai nahi, karega kya? So, now it came to, your general contribution to it, right? And I picked up everything. So I said, okay, there is no HR today. We couldn't afford an HR, so I'll do HR. But when you come down to doing things and when you're really, really driven, it's amazing what you can do, right? I wanted to do sales. I was a telecaller when I started my career. So I understood telecalling and, so it just kept happening. And of course, the reality today is that I am a master of none. I'm hoping that, my bosses and my investors ignore that part. But it's all about, how do you just keep at it? Every single morning, every single day, do you kind of come back into are you able to take up a new challenge? And in our company, we've started, actually rotating people, right? We've said, okay, nobody does one thing for one point in time. And that gets fresh perspective into every little task that we do. So I think it's a no-brainer. You just keep doing whatever you have to do to kind of feed the family.
Thank you. We are just at the end of our prescribed time. So, really want to thank our panelists. I have to say the passion that each of you brought to the discussion, which was very clear, and the specific instances that you shared, I think was, very helpful to me personally, and I'm sure to the audience as well. And thank you, the audience. I think you've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.